what are the toolings that you think are pretty that the organizations can use right now? So we know that there is ChatGPT that they can use in Gen AI, but what else tools, AI-based tools, you see in the industry right now that would be pretty helpful? That not just big organizations, but everybody in the software industry can start using.
Do we to go, Sriram?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked to lots of different companies. I'm not going to mention the names. Some are competitors, some are customers. Sorry, some are partners. So, but it's interesting what's out there. So there are AI tools out there right now which can do requirement scoring. And what they do is they'll look at the requirements and they can now analyze them. And this is completely different to generative AI. It existed 3 or 4 years ago. And they will look at the requirements and they will score them and come back with a feedback on how well the requirement is written. A simple example might be it uses lots of words like it, they, rather than saying the customer or the approver. And so the nouns are indeterminate, or it may use words that are unclear. I don't know. Basically, it can rate how well that requirement is written and how easy could it be understood by someone other than the person who wrote it. Does it cover all the edge cases? And so that scoring is a very useful set of functionality. And that right now it was originally used for the purposes of helping improve human written user stories. I am sure as we use generative AI to write user stories, which I'm sure people are doing, these types of other AI can be very useful. And this already exists on the market. So requirement scoring tools are good. Other things we've seen are tools that will look at the code commits. And I mentioned the code quality. They can identify where there's likely weaknesses. Either because it may look for known patterns like null pointers, or it may just look for historical. When you commit this code, we had lots of tests that failed. When we committed this code, it didn't. And maybe it will be able to look back and see which kinds of types of change have the most impact on negative outcomes. Other ones we're seeing on the automation space is interesting. Some customers of ours have been playing around with Copilot, and this is from Microsoft actually, so I can mention that. Because some of the Copilot tools are pretty cool to play around with. They can actually go out there and they can explain what the code does. They can actually write automation scripts, even in languages and tools that we didn't even know it knew. Amazingly, we asked it to write automation script in one of our tools, and it did. We're like, how does it know our script? Well, it's in GitHub. It scans all the GitHub repos. There's tons of samples out there. So we were amazed. Clients were even using it, and they were showing us how we're using Copilot to write automation scripts in our own tool. And that was like, wow, that's mind-blowing. Another interesting one our R&D team has been playing around with is some of the visual tools, image recognition, image capture, the ability to take a picture of a page and be able to interpret what that page has. A lot of times you're doing test automation, you're dealing with a complex DOM structures if it's browser-based, or maybe it's Citrix. So there's lots of challenging automation tests which are very hard to automate using traditional test automation tools. And the AI is able to look at a page and say, oh, this is a list of books. This is a shopping cart. I understand that. I can test it. So it's going to start to take on some of the roles of exploratory testing. In our initial R&D, we can use AI to do exploratory testing, which is very scary and very interesting. And I don't know, another podcast all by itself. But so I think there's tools out there to help various facets. And as Sriram mentioned, cybersecurity, everyone's using it already to do threat detection, threat analysis, and hacking. So on both the red and the white hat side of the cyberspace, AI is already being used heavily. So I think those are some use cases I see in terms of different tools that people can look at.
Right. So just to extend, all those use cases are completely 100%, valid. And just to extend those thought process, we've been talking about test-driven development, right? But many times people are not writing the test cases first before they actually write a piece of code. So, AI can come in and help write over here. So as a developer is beginning to write a piece of code, as soon as he or she is writing if X is greater than 5, immediately write a unit test case for this. Develop that.
Yes.
And you are writing X is greater than 5, and it was X initialized before. So otherwise it could lead into memory problems and uninitialized variable being used and stuff like that. So thinking about from not just test case generation, but also the code quality, the compliance of the coding protocol that we have, and stuff like that. That's one element that I'm already thinking here. The other one I'm thinking about is also the computing resources. How much CPU power will be required, and what element, what extent of heat may be generated in the battery because of this. How much storage may be required. So what is the throughput in the memory that is being transferred for the network and stuff like that. So these are some of the additional things that can come into. And in software world, we always call one of these things as XCTs, especially in requirements management world. We call this XCTs, which is the security, the portability, the reliability, and all those other things other than the functional test case requirement that you write. There also you can come and start thinking in terms of I have a HIPAA requirement. As part of that HIPAA or SOX requirement, what are some of the test cases that I may have to create as soon as I write a module that has very protected information? What roles can actually should access this. So immediately create use case test cases around that.
That's right.
And evaluate that. So these are thoughts that I'm thinking through, and these will emerge. And I'm not saying that there are tools immediately existing already to do that, but these things will emerge and they will come through.
Actually, on that, one of our partners, Orca, they have that tool Swiftly, which actually they've built it particularly for government contracting. They have a lot of the U.S. government statutory requirements built into the tool, and so when you start to develop a project, it can actually build out an initial set of user stories based on the regulatory environment you're working in. And they focused a lot on the U.S. government side of things. But Srim is right. You take HIPAA, or you take Sarbanes-Oxley, you take FDA, you take European legislation, Indian, Brazilian banking registrations. Pick a country, pick a regulation. It can start to generate at least a lot of the compliance requirements without a human having to do that, because that stuff's well known. It's codified in law. It's also very difficult for humans to process because it's a lot of text. It's written by lawyers. It's actually a really good use case for AI is to tell me all the requirements for building a new system that supports accessibility, like Section 508, or the new European law on accessibility. What do we have to do to comply with that? Particularly for some of these non-function requirements, which are well understood or at least well documented, AI is a really good candidate because they're quite stable, relatively speaking.